Us. He's the U.S. Senator. He's a Republican. He's a key member of the Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, you hear that you hear those shots. You see what's going on. You've been briefed on this situation, I assume. Tell us what you know.
Well, Wolf, virtually everything that is known, you've reported. There's a few details that are classified. But by and large, you know exactly what happened, and the details that are classified wouldn't change the conclusions and those things that you've already reported. I will say a couple of things we note from this. First of all, you and I have been talking about this for a long time. This is exactly the kind of thing that we've talked about. We have a very, very robust intelligence community in America that are doing a great job. This kind of situation is the most dangerous because this guy just did not give the signals ahead of time that can be picked up. If there's no signals of any kind, there's no evidence ahead of time, you really can't blame anyone for not picking it up. And that's pretty much what we had here. The people you interviewed that knew him from the past just gave no indications that this guy had these kind of problems. The one thing, of course, that immediately pops out at you are these trips that he made over to Jordan. In the recent past, of course, he had a 7-month stint over there in Jordan. Obviously, something happened there. We'll find out. We'll follow those strings back and see what the connections were there. We'll get to the bottom of that, but it's very difficult. The one thing I'm holding judgment on a little bit is I know one of my colleagues said that they were convinced this was an ISIS-inspired attack. I'm convinced that it was a radical Islamic-inspired attack. I'm not so sure it was ISIS. You know, there's a lot of them out there. Al-Qaeda's still out there. Al-Nusra's out there. There's lots of others out there. Now, admittedly, ISIS is the most likely candidate, but you notice they haven't jumped forward in all of these other ISIS-inspired ones. Within a very short period of time, they jumped right in the middle of it and said, look, this is ours. This is what we did. That hasn't happened here yet, so I'm going to reserve judgment on it. But there's no question that it's one of those groups, clearly, that inspired this person to do this.
And very often after this kind of incident, as you know, Senator, there's also a video that's released, some so-called martyr video that's released by some group explaining why this individual went out there and did what he did. Senator, stand by. We're getting new information. I just want to go through it. We'll take a quick break. Much more with Senator Risch when we come back. I want to go back to Senator James Risch, who's joining us. So what do you think about these latest developments? First of all, Senator, the fact that he had 4 guns, not 2, not 3, but 4, and a lot of ammunition clips.
Well, we haven't focused on the guns. This guy was a United States citizen. He had nothing in his background that would stop him from going out and purchasing as many guns as he wants. He was exercising his Second Amendment right in that regard. A lot of us that own guns, and that isn't what we're focused on. We're focused on the individual, what he did, and how he got radicalized. And I don't think there's any question but that he was radicalized. An interesting point you just discussed, and that's becoming more and more common, is what you called the sounds of silence. I'd call it the deep internet. There are ways, obviously, to communicate anymore that you can use encryption and different ways to mask what you do. Although, again, that is not what we usually see in these. We usually see where people are stating their opinions, doing manifestos, doing a lot of different things. We had none of that with this guy. There was just nothing in his background, with the possible exception of his father some years back. But that's really about it, and it's the most dangerous condition you can possibly have.
Do you have any information to believe that while he was, let's say, in Jordan for those 7 months, he was being trained by someone? Someone was instructing him, you know what, you don't go on social media, you don't post anything on Facebook or Twitter, you stay silent, but get ready, you're going to be doing something.
Entirely possible. Certainly, it is suspicious that there was that long of a trip over to Jordan, which of course is immediately adjacent to Syria, and easily you could move from Jordan into Syria. You just don't know what happened over there, but there are ways and means of finding out what he did over there and who he was in contact with, and that will all be analyzed in detail to find out exactly what happened. Something happened. There's absolutely no question about it. What it was and who it was that did this is of real interest to us.
Is security good enough at these U.S. military recruitment centers? You've got some in your home state of Idaho.
Sure.
Are you worried about what's going on at these so-called soft targets?
Well, you know, for Americans, we don't build defensive mechanisms wherever we are, and a recruiting station certainly wouldn't be high on the list of something you'd think about as being a target. But you know, we've had these over recent years. We've had situations in supermarkets, in movie theaters, in malls, and in stores. Look, we can't go about our lives building walls around everything that we do, and you know, there's 330 million of us, and we try to go about our lives regularly. Unfortunately, you and I are talking about these sorts of things way too frequently. The good news is, as you've noted earlier today, there were a lot of these broken up. For every one of these that we hear about or that they have some success in, as you know, the intelligence community and the FBI thwarts a lot of these, and that's a good thing.
Last week,
that happens.
Last week, you told us here in the Situation Room, Senator, in your words, these lone wolf type of attacks, they're smaller, they're still very devastating, and you said there's no question they're going to happen, they're going to succeed here in the United States. You were basing that on what?
Well, I think the collection of all the information that we have, but more importantly, the trend. This isn't something new. This has been trending for over a year, where we're seeing these kind of attacks. We've really shifted, and the terrorist groups have shifted from these large, iconic kinds of things to more of the smaller lone wolf attacks. That certainly doesn't make them any less devastating to the innocent people that are caught up in it. But nonetheless, that's the shift, and it's easier to do, it's easier to pull off, and that's what as they've had these small successes that they have had in the United States, it has been using this new method, if you would, of attack, as opposed to the larger iconic kinds of things that they've attempted in the past.
Senator Risch, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet. Well, thank you for having me.
Just ahead, we could know more in a matter of only a few hours about what was the Chattanooga gunman's, what was inside the computers and cell phones of this killer. Our correspondents, they're working their stories. We're getting new information on the investigation. Plus, should U.S. troops be allowed to carry weapons inside recruitment and training facilities at shopping centers and office buildings all over the United States? We're learning about the initial security review process. It's underway at the Pentagon. We're getting new information.
What's happening?